Hello and welcome to the show. Joining me today is Sara Kozumplik Murphy. I've caught up with her as she's at an event up in Millbrook, New York at the moment for this weekend, but I did want to get her take on the Olympics so far. I know we've still got team jumping to go, but so far, we've had the dressage and we've had the show, the eventing and the show jumping individual. So Sara, welcome back to the program. Thanks for taking time out to do this.
Oh, no, thanks for having me as always, Chris. I really appreciate it. And watching the Olympics this year is especially exciting, honestly. I just, there's been lots of records broken and some cool people to follow and across the board.
Yeah, and I know there's so many sports and we've had such tremendous coverage here in the US. We've really been lucky in that regard that the NBC is a major rights holder. So we are saturated with the Olympics. And you told me just before we hit record here, Sara, that you actually did dip into some gymnastics and some swimming as well. So it's not exclusively equestrian sport. Did you do any other sports when you were growing up?
No, I didn't at all. And I don't really have any excuse for that, except for the fact that my mom was a riding instructor, and honestly, that was a sport that I did. My brother played rugby, and he loved that. But I honestly was horses all the time, and that's kind of, I've been enjoying recently since my accident a few years ago, and I had to sort of think about different ways to get fitter again. That when your body's just so used to doing one thing, you sort of have to get a little bit creative when you're trying to get your body back into shape. And I actually started. I've never been a runner at all, and I actually started running. Once I had a bone graft, and I broke my back and my neck, and so they wouldn't let me really even start walking until 6 months. But I slowly have built up from that, and I've actually really enjoyed that now. So I kind of like watching a little bit of the track stuff too, and the all of that, and I'm now really loving that. So I think it's fun to kind of try. I didn't really do a lot of different things as a kid, but it's sort of fun to do some different stuff now.
Yeah, for some cross training, I can imagine, and you have, as you say, you have to be creative when you have an injury in any sport, to find something that you can do to build up your strength again, so you don't lose muscle and balance, and some of the vital things that we need as an athlete. So it's a good opportunity to get creative.
Yeah, we have to do. I mean, in horse sports, I mean, we do have to do a lot of cross training, especially. I mean, obviously, every athlete is going to be better when they're fitter. But I'd say in eventing, it's extremely important just with the galloping, in addition to all of that. And if you get stuck in, if you've been riding horses for 20 years, that's not going to do it, right? Like you've got to mix stuff, and you got to do other things. And just like football players or whatever else, I mean, everybody's doing Pilates and yoga and things to help prevent injury and to get stronger and to work on your core. And then you've just got to change it up. Like, I do something where I do a bit of, the weights and the Pilates and all of that, but also running, as I said, and I've never been a runner, and rowing. And all of that has just really, really helped to stay where you need to be.
Yeah, for sure. And we know how fit you have to be for an Olympic Games. And we want to look at, first of all, the dressage, that I know you were following that too, the pure dressage, not the eventing dressage. Being an eventer, you look at the other Olympic disciplines as well. So let's start with that, because we saw records broken. We saw some fantastic performances in the individual. The Germans took the gold and silver, of course, and GB with Charlotte Desjardins won the bronze. But what were your takeaways for some of those performances? I mean, Jessica von Breda-Wendl, she won that individual with a score of 91.732. That was extraordinary, 91. When I saw that, I was like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely out of this world. And I think, another thing that I think Carl Hester had mentioned, which I thought was a relevant point, is that, they weren't really sure where they were going to match up against the rest of the world, because obviously with COVID, the competitions have not been open. And so, they kind of went into it. They had some younger horses. Great Britain had some younger horses. And, they went into it a little bit blind, like just wondering, God, are we just kidding ourselves that we're going to match up against the rest of the world? And I think that's a really solid point going to these games versus any other games, where you really feel like it's fresh in your mind what the rest of the world is doing and how competitive you are against them.
Yes, and of course with COVID, the preparation has been so warped, and the games themselves delayed, as we know, by a year. And it affects the preparation, not least of all for athletes in any sport. But when you've got a horse too that could peak a year ago, would be past his peak this year.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're looking at two. I mean, in equestrian sport, they always use the hashtag two hearts, alluding to the fact that there's two athletes. And I think, that is one of the wonderful things about our sport, but it's also one of the hard things about our sport, that you do have to manage, two careers at the same time, and hoping that you get, everyone to peak exactly when you need them to. And I think like in all things, for some people it benefited. Like I'd imagine Charlotte's horse, like that's, quite an inexperienced horse. Like the extra year was probably extremely helpful for that. I think that horse is only 10 years old, and then I think, on the flip side, he could have had somebody that had 19 or 20-year-old horse, and that they just weren't able to get there,
Yeah, no, very true.
And then you're looking at the other challenges involved with flying to Tokyo and the heat in Tokyo, and they did it from all I wasn't there, but all intents and purposes, it seemed like they did an incredible job managing the scheduling of that, and how obviously the barns are temperature controlled, and they and you think about, might have been a little bit easier, even though we had a longer way to travel, might have been a little bit easier for U.S. horses and riders that are used to competing in extreme heat, versus talking to someone from England. Like, it's definitely not, right? So I thought they handled all of that very, very well. And I thought the teams themselves managed that very well, because that's not, hats off to the grooms and everything else, because that's a lot to organize.
Yes, it is. And as you mentioned, not just England, but also the Northern Europeans, who would not be used to hot and humid conditions, no matter really where they go in Europe to compete. And even that would have been inhibited too. The other thing, because of COVID, but the other thing that strikes me, and this goes to all sports really, is because of COVID, they haven't been measured against other athletes in the world, other combinations in the world. They haven't been competing against them to know where they really sit.
Absolutely. And that's a huge point. That was a point that Carl made, and I hadn't really thought about it. Not that I hadn't thought about it, but I hadn't thought about it as much with how restricted that they had been, because they were more restricted than we were.
Yes.
But not that we, we still have also had challenges. And that's why I thought it was so vital for us to have Kentucky run this year. Because that's one of the points, right? Like, you can't go to the Olympic Games and not have any time that you've ridden at the highest level against competition, other than the person you're used to riding against, every month.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Now, just looking at that lineup, the top five in the freestyle there, the individual rankings, they were women. I know that what's the one thing about our sport, it is both men and women
cool thing
competing.
About sport, yeah.
Yeah, but the girls did really, really well. And of course, the highest placed American rider was Sabina Kerry, making her Olympic debut there with Sancero. And then Stefan Peters with that wonderful freestyle performance there with Sippen Kasper. I think these were performances that you would expect certainly from Stefan, who is so experienced. But what was your take on Sabina Kerry's performance? Because that was all new to us.
Absolutely. What a gorgeous rider. I've been lucky enough to watch these guys a bit, so that's kind of fun. I actually saw that freestyle in Palm Beach this winter, and I love that. I love when especially when people like him, who have been, kind of bring the gravitas to the sport, where they can shake it. They sort of have a little bit more leeway to shake it up sometimes, right? And I think it is very important that we already look a little like our outfits honestly need to change, Chris, right? Like, we already look a little silly, right? We're looking like we just jumped off of a Regency novel, And I think when people like him do that, I just thoroughly enjoy it and appreciate it, because he's trying to make our sport more relatable. I'm sure you saw the hits that TikTok thing got from Snoop Dogg, Kevin Hart, and that is what we need, right? That is what we need.
Absolutely.
It'd be great if it would be great if he wasn't in a tailcoat when it went on, but it just don't look like an athlete. But and he absolutely is an athlete. So I think I love that sort of stuff. But all of those riders, like, and that enormous amount of pressure. I mean, I thought Adrienne as well. I mean, both of those girls were fantastic. You know, they yes. really rose to the occasion, and you know, hats off to them. It's nice to have someone, an anchor like Stefan on the team that can kind of, that is obviously, he must be generous and I don't know the man personally, but he must be a generous and supportive human being, because the atmosphere around all of that is really, like, you can tell how positive it is, right? And yes. we all know that that's where the best results come from. You could be an unbelievable performers, but if you've got somebody that's a bit too selfish in those atmospheres, it just brings the whole thing down, you know?
And the Olympics, we should also, mention that the Olympic Games is very different to any other competition, isn't it? You know, when you get to an Olympic Games, it's a totally different world, because you're one sport of so many. It's not like the World Equestrian Games when you're just equestrian sport. That the whole atmosphere of an Olympic Games usually it creates a new kind of pressure, if you will. This year, and I was saying this on another show, with there being no crowds, no family support and so on for these athletes, the only athletes I think would have been glad of that were the horses for dressage.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't, I can imagine. It's definitely my only way I can sort of relate is that, again, I'm just bringing up Kentucky again, because it's the only thing I can think of that would be that I have competed in at that level during COVID sort of stuff that had been impacted by COVID. And it was really strange, right? Because you're used to having, the grandstands completely full, and you're used to having all of that stuff. But it's funny though, and I don't know, I haven't really spoken too much to everybody since they've gotten back. They only just got back, but I have to say though, I think that sort of, at least I still felt it. I think that sort of magic of what that is still there. Like maybe you don't realize the impact. I know, Charlotte and then Carl had said when they got back that, and I'm sure the same thing with our record-breaking, silver medal dressage team. But I'm sure, like, they didn't really realize the impact is that you were in and out so quickly, right? Like you you did your last ride, and you were literally shipped out. Like you're gone. Yes. And then you really realize you don't have time to realize what has just happened, and then you land, and then it sort of hits you, right? Yes. So I'm sure it felt a bit surreal, and I think too. Yeah, I mean, the Olympics means something that nothing else in our sport does. Like in eventing, technically, it's not the highest level of our sport, right? But yes. It means more than, right? Like just because any average Joe anywhere in the world, you don't have to be in a country where the sport is popular. They all know what the Olympic Games is. It just means something, right? So it's an honor. It's just everybody's gonna going to want to aspire to that, right?
And it's a universal understanding of the caliber of competition too. Everybody understands that the meaning of the Olympic Games. Yes, it just doesn't matter if it's a 5-year-old kid that you meet in like wherever, right? Like Uganda or someone in Russia or where, it does speak its own language, and that's actually that's the point of the whole thing, right? Like it's supposed to promote world solidarity and unity and peace, and so like that's the whole point. And so that's another kind of cool reason to be a part of it, where our world championships are harder, but it's still so insular in our own network of people. It doesn't just doesn't translate. No, for sure. Well, I want to move on to eventing, but just before we do, congratulate our US team for as you said, for picking up that silver medal, which behind Germany, of course, won the gold, and then beating Team GB. So that was a very, very good result for US dressage. So let's move on to your sport, to eventing.
Huge. Yeah.
So with the eventing, we're down to a team of 3 with all of the equestrian events. What's your thoughts on that?
Please don't ask me to even understand what the hell is going on with that format. I'm not sure. I'm not sure anyone does. I don't actually believe that anyone knows what's going on with that.
Right.
Yeah, it's not our sport. I'll say that straight up. It's not our sport. I wish it hadn't been messed around with so much. It feels like every Olympic Games that we have, there's some, and I know you know this, there's some tweaking to it. I mean, I thought it was ridiculous when we had individual and team stuff being separate. So then your individual gold medalist is like, there's only a couple people in that section. And that's not, to me, that's not the point. Like, I think I understand that the reason it's that way is there has to be a separate effort for an individual medal. I do get that, but I also think that it just doesn't really work very well for our sport, and it's a bit frustrating to me to watch that. And I'm not taking away from anything at all. I know you know that. I'm more excited than anyone in the world about having our Olympic gold medalist, individual medalist be a woman this year. And that's huge, especially when we owe a lot to Lana DuPont, who was the very first woman to break those barriers down for us in Tokyo in 1964. So it's really nice to have it go full circle and come back to Tokyo, 2020, have a woman actually win that. So
I was a little bit surprised, when that emerged, that Julia was the first woman to win that, because there are so many women.
Almost did. It was those bloody flags, remember, in Athens in 2004.
Right. Yeah. We won't mention that to Bettina Hoy, of course.
I guess I'm sure she's pretty annoyed about that.
Yes.
So.
Yes, she will. She will never live that down. Sorry, Bettina. But the fact that there's so many very good women in our sport that have been on Olympic teams. I mean, period. But that have been on Olympic teams and won medals. It does surprise me a little bit that Julie is the first individual.
Yeah, no, for sure, but here we are, right? Like, and I have to say, I think we have had a lot of very good women, absolutely, but I'd say we have a lot more in the last 10 years than we had consistently before that. And so I think that our ranks are just swelling. Like, people are just, yes, there's always been great riders, don't get me wrong, but it just never seemed to come together in an Olympic Games for them, right? And I do think that was a numbers, not in the U.S. I mean, it's a little different, but I think it's a little bit of a numbers game. There just were at the time, just more men. So that's just the way it shaked out.
Well, it did look from our television screens, the whole eventing, well, all of the equestrian sports were so well organized. The cross-country course looked fabulous. There were no crowds, of course, but just talk us through what you saw of the eventing competition and your impressions of it all, of the course and how it played out, Sarah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I wasn't there, so I don't want to sound like I was, but I will say that just from, yes, I did watch a lot of it. I do, know a little bit about it, but I would say I thought they did. I heard from many people and many different riders from different countries that the facilities were absolutely top notch. I mean, and we sort of knew this before. I was feeling really, I know a lot of people were, but really terrible when the games did get postponed, because we knew that they were everyone was on the ball for this, and we all know that that's not always the case, right? So it's so you feel bad that when a country goes to that much effort to do something so well, to then have it pulled. So I'm glad that they got to use it. But from all accounts that I have heard, that everyone was so welcoming. The facility was incredible. The videos and pictures that I saw from what they had set up, like the practice cross country fields, and you could add places to graze your horses. The barns are temperature controlled. Everything was, organized to a T. The stadiums are stunning. The footing was great. I mean, I think I didn't hear one negative thing about the actual running of the Olympic Games or the standard of where the horses were. And so that's massive, because usually that's not a given. And then the other, Derek DeGrazia, I'm a huge fan of his. I think his courses are fantastic. I know that, everything that I had seen and watched and after I talked to people about it, before people went cross country, everyone was really concerned about the time. hindsight's 2020. He obviously built a tough track and a beautiful track. The jumps were just stunning. I will say I thought that maybe there were too many clears to be, maybe some of the, but this is, hindsight's 2020, and these are the best athletes in the world. But some of the long routes seem like they didn't really rack up enough time penalties for someone taking a long route. I feel like if you're going to take a long route, you need to get some rack up enough steps for that, right?
Yes.
And then the other hugely controversial thing that, of course, we have to talk about is the fact that Michael Young, the reason he lost was that pin. Now, it was only by a tiny bit. Like, he did have a pole down, so it would have, but still, he would have won. And so you were looking at that, and you're kind of like, well. And I thought he's a classy guy in general, right? But I thought the way he handled it was really professional, and he did obviously protest it, then he accepted it very well. But the point he brought up, I agreed with, where he said, okay, well, look, because he broke a frangible pin, and I saw that as well. He broke a frangible pin at Lemulin, and he said, at Lemulin, I that should have happened. Like, I would have had a fall if that pin hadn't gone down. He said, but I really feel that this pin, it fell a couple, like 3 or 4 strides after he cantered away from the fence. Like, I would not have fallen. I have video footage. Like, he wasn't allowed to show the video. He was good because he didn't whine about it. Like, I loved how he was. He just said, oh, well, this is the way it is. I'm sad, but on we go. Go. He didn't make a big song and dance about it. But I think the point there being, while I'm a huge fan of frangible technology, I think we do. It's not perfected yet, right? Like, it's not perfected yet. And for him to get that pin actually did really bother me. And there's been 1 or 2 other instances where I've seen pins go, and I thought, oh, that's not really what, it's not really what the spirit of what this is supposed to do, And I get that they have to make one rule that's going to be equal across the board, but maybe, again, I don't know enough about it, so probably I should let somebody else speak about it. But I know that they use the yellow clips, which they just don't take as much of a. And when I just felt like the bloody thing fell too much. Let's just be honest. I felt like it fell too much. But okay, so but other than that, the cream rose to the top. Like, let's also be honest about that. The Brits were out of this world. That was another record-breaking result. There's never been a score that low. And all 3 of their riders were skipped around that were inside the time. So yes. I don't think anybody thought it was going to be that easy to make. It was a little easier to make than people thought. But again, it's also an Olympic game, so it's a very hard balance. I can't imagine, being Derek and trying to build something that all of these different nations can jump, and still test the very best in the world. Like, that's not he's got to be careful that he doesn't have some horrible accident as best he can. And I thought he did a brilliant job. I really did. So,
and he had 14 teams finishing, GB, as you said, got the gold, and Australia the silver, and France the bronze. But the US performance, 6th overall in the team. What did you make of that? Because we had 3 riders, all boys on the team there, Doug Payne, Boyd Martin and Philip Dutton. They finished 18th, 20th and 21st, I believe, respectively. What were your impressions of those performances, those expectations going into these games, knowing Derek's courses, as of course all of them do so well from Kentucky? What did you take away from those performances?
Well, I think one thing you have to do when you're talking about this is you need to look at it in the context of we've had a lot of bad championship luck. I think things have not gone well. Like, let's just be honest, things have not gone well for the U.S. for a very long time. So anybody that wants to talk about a Pan Am result, I'm just like, well, that doesn't actually get real. That's not that's not an Olympic game. It's not a World Championships, right? Yeah. So we have absolutely not been doing a good enough job. But so the last time we were any good, it was really at Aachen in 2006 and at Athens in 2004. But we haven't done well at all since then. So I will say that I feel that it was a lot of pressure on these guys to not have a cross country problem at these games. especially when there was only the 3 riders. Like I know they felt that they couldn't take risks in that way. Their number one priority was jumping clean and the jumping on the cross country. I know, talking about the whole competition, I thought, Doug got everything I think he got everything he could have gotten out of that horse. I was impressed and a little surprised, honestly, that he had 1 pole down in the team and the individual. I think that's the absolute best result that Wendl could have had. And that's a big heart on that horse. And for Doug's first Olympic Games, especially, I thought his result was impressive. Like, I do not think that was possible. If I would have said that horse would have had 1 down at best in the team and 3 down in the individual. So my hat is off to him. I think his result was super. And then you go to, the other guys who are obviously unbelievable legends really in the sport. They're both fantastic and driven and know what they're doing. I think it was a bit disappointing. Philip did a beautiful dressage test, and I thought he got a little bit, he should have had a slightly better score, in my opinion. And then it was a bit disappointing with Boyd, but with his dressage, only because that horse has been so consistent and Boyd has been so consistent on it. And so I know we were all a little bit, oh, shoot. And it's certainly not from lack of preparation and not trying, because, nobody tries harder than he does. So that was, I think that I'd just say that was disappointing. I think we expected to maybe have, we expected to have that horse in the mid-20s or mid to late 20s. And I personally feel that Z should have scored a tiny bit better. And then, then you go into the cross country again. I think Doug did his job. He was the first rider out. And the number one thing was come home safely with no jumping penalties. And he did that. And I know that's what he would have been told. And I thought the other guys rode well. Like, I mean, they rode, they also, it would be nice if they had been a little bit faster, of course, but, they also came in well. And our Achilles heel in the last 2 championships has been the show jumping, absolutely, full stop. So I think, I think having 1 pole down, is a good result. I don't think you can say you're going to go clear, right? But I think having 1 pole down is a good result. And I think it was a little surprising that Z, who is a good show jumper, but you never know. I mean, the part is, Chris, we don't know. That's a lot of traveling, a lot of stuff. I mean, they had to do all the quarantine in Aachen. They had to do, we don't know. And all I can tell you is that Emma Ford is the best groom, one of the best, if not the best groom in the world. So that horse would have had everything possible to have it feeling as good as it could, but it's still a lot, right? And I just wonder whether he honestly just got a bit affected by the travel.
Yes.
And that can happen. So I'm not excusing. I mean, I think those guys aren't either. I mean, I feel like I can speak this way because they would say the same thing. Like, nobody's happy with 6th place is not good enough, right? But I will say that looking at it from just a larger lens, and you say, okay, well, yes, but the U.S. has been really not good at all for a very, and at least you're finishing the bloody cross country without any jumping penalties and getting back a little bit in the right direction. It's not good enough, but it's not having a disaster, which we have had.
So work to be done there. And I just want to remind everybody there were 2 women in the top 10 in the eventing in the final individual classification. And we just mentioned there were 5, the top 5 women, top 5 places in dressage were women. So let's move on to the jumping as well, because the show jumping concludes this week as the Olympic Games themselves conclude, and then conclude with the team competition. So we've had the individual final, and we've got another British gold medalist.
Insane. I mean, holy cow, that was insane. That was really. I don't know if you saw
I think best horse, best rider, best riding.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Mayer, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, have you ever seen anything like that? I don't think I have.
No.
And then you look at the I don't know if you saw the dimensions. I mean, I'm not a show jumper, obviously, but my husband is, and I've been around it and watched it. And I got someone to send me the course map for the individual final and the dimensions of that. And I was thinking, gosh, you think you have a careful horse or a scopy horse, and this is just absolutely another league, right? Like, I mean, yes. I can't even imagine, 160, 165 by 175 width. Yes. I was like meter 65, meter 75 width. I was like, oh my God, like just looking at this, right? Like
absolutely. They are huge if you're on the ground, if you ever get to walk.
Huge. And they fall over if you blow on them. And, the right. cups are like, there's no, it's just like, I can't even imagine being there in person, because just watching it I honestly think that is the best show jumping I have ever seen in my life. It was unreal. So, and yeah, and it's pretty cool to see, well, not cool, but the Olympics, when you talk about the pressure of it all, like it does seem to rattle people more than the World Equestrian Games or whatever else that Champions League or whatever it is that these guys are doing, because you see the very uncharacteristic mistakes, here, and you're looking at it, and you're like, oh God, you actually have, you're human, for God's sake, you're like, I mean, I don't think I've ever in my life seen Bertram Allen miss to anything, right? And I was like the most beautiful rider, like I just love watching him, right? Yeah. And I know that ride into the triple, and I was like, oh God, he is human, thank God.
yeah. It's such perfectionism when it gets, when you get to that level, and such accuracy that it really was a joy to watch. So we've got the team final to come. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, because we're going back to our multi-gender sport. We've got 2 boys and 2 girls that are on that team. We've got 2 girls, Jessica Springsteen and Laura Kraut, of course, is so experienced. What are your thoughts?
Laura's unreal. Yeah.
She is.
Well, maybe I shouldn't comment as much on the show jump, because I don't know enough, but I will. I mean, I obviously I'm impressed with all of them, and Laura Kraut, I will tell you, can also ride cross country very, very well. So she used to teach our U.S. team in eventing. Well, she did the show jumping part of the eventing, and she used to sometimes grab horses and have a play out in the field and do stuff. And so that woman can do pretty much anything. And so I think she's obviously should never be overlooked, and it's a very strong team. And I definitely said, the U.S. in show jumping is our strongest phase. So nobody should ever overlook us for a team medal. I mean, I believe that strongly.
Yes.
I think some other teams that could really do it as well. I mean, I honestly was very impressed with the Irish horses. Mm-hmm. Even though I know, there were some others that were unreal as well. I mean, Sweden and other, I mean, there's just, it's hard to look at some of these teams from around the world and go, oh, this one is definitely going to do it, and that one is definitely going to do it. I think it's a much more exciting shake up on the team competition, I think, than eventing and dressage. You can sort of tell who's most likely to win the eventing and dressage. But the show jumping could be a few countries, right? Like it's really going to be.
It really could. When you look at the individual rankings, we had 3 Swedish riders in the top 6 in that jump off. The 6 went into the jump off.
Wasn't that unreal? I know.
3 of them. Half of them were Swedish. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. But then I kind of also, I mean, I don't know. I kind of also wonder, like, it's a lot of jumping, right?
It is a lot of jumping at the games.
So thinking about some of that too, like maybe the people, as much as like we would have liked to have had stuff going on in the individual, maybe it'll be to our benefit. Like you just don't know, right? It's a lot of jumping. So
yes.
We'll just see. We'll see how it all shakes out. But I will say, I mean, the Americans have been extremely consistent in the last championships, good 10 years, like 15 years. So, I think you can't rule us out. But it's really, I think it's anybody's game. I don't know about you, but I think it's anybody's game.
I
think
agree.
we can completely be silent. I mean, I will say
It's a good point now, what you said about, having not done the individual, these horses are going to be fresher for the team jumping.
It's so much jumping. I mean, I remember a long time ago, can't even remember what year it was. Maybe it was 2010. And I was watching as I was down training in Palm Beach, and I was watching what they were doing for the selection trials for the jumping, and then the coach at the time made them do the same format that they were going to do at the World Games, the amount of jumping and the same amount of days on the same horse, right? And that was in February, I think, that they did that. And I remember sitting there watching that, and that is, I mean, Chris, that is some amount of jumping over something like 8 days. It's just, I know. It's incredible. And so I kind of, that's where I think it's really hard for us to sit here and say, it could solidly be this one or solidly be that, because there's so many variables and factors, and they're also, all of them are so good. It's not slightly good, right? They're all good. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think there's a country that is, you can say, oh, this one's definitely going to win, No.
I think it'll be a very, very exciting finale to these games. So finally, let's wrap up with, your biggest takeaway as a spectator, as a professional rider, but as a spectator to these games. Very unusual Olympics in every respect. What were your biggest takeaways? What would be the things that you would remember from Tokyo 2021?
I think I would remember that they did a really good job. I think that they should get a lot of credit for, because to me, I just enjoyed seeing how happy the horses looked and how, these horses traveled well, and they all mostly, for the most part, competed well, and they had lovely places for them to walk and be. And I think so that for me, whenever I'm watching a games, I'm always really sensitive to how the athletes are being treated. And of course, since the horses don't have their own voice, it's extra important to me for that. And I think the other main thing that stands out to me is that we have had two individual gold medalists that were women, and as I said, it was the very first time that we've had a woman in eventing win that. So it's a lovely sort of full circle that Lana DuPont was our person to groundbreak, our woman to groundbreak competing in our sport in 1964 in Tokyo, and then for that medal to be won by a woman in 2020 is pretty cool.
Pretty cool indeed. Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, well, as I said at the top of the show, that you are at an event yourself, Millbrook, this weekend in New York. How many horses do you have up there?
I've got two in the advanced and one in the intermediate, and then I have a bunch of students doing sort of like preliminary level and below. And I always like bringing them up here to Millbrook because the courses are fantastic, and we get to practice show jumping loft, which we don't get to do as much anymore. And as you know, obviously the proper format in eventing is we do show jump loft. So it's nice to come up here and get that practice in, so we're a bit more prepared for championship competition.
Yeah, well, the very best of luck. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Sara, thank you very much for taking time to come on the show. But before you leave, let everybody know how they can find you on social media. Are you on TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok. I obviously need to get on it. I've obviously got to learn all this stuff. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and obviously I need to be on. So obviously I need to get on TikTok, and it's just Sara Kozumplik Murphy. Not that anyone's going to remember the Kozumplik bit, but
well, we will put a link in the show notes to your social media. That's at wispsports.com, and we're of course on all your social media channels at Wisp Sports. Sara, thanks so much for taking time to do this. Always good to talk to you and get your take on things. And have a wonderful weekend.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate being included. You too. I hope everyone has a good weekend as well.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. I'll be back next week with another episode of The Horse Show. Until then, thank you for listening.